Well, we have Dr. Yusuf here, the Chief Executive Officer of Center for Promotion of Private Enterprises. Dr. Muda Yusuf is here in the studio. At least we are audio-visual, so we'll go beyond the statement.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Yusuf, good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Ine. Thank you.
Yeah, so let me ask you too, why is it only the public sector? We are here in the private sector, which are feeling the inflation. Where is our own increase now?
Well, even in the private sector, we also have unions, you have also frameworks to engage employers. I think those unions and all of those people should be able to also engage the employers. And even without that, I think the employers too should be a bit proactive. You don't have to wait for your employees to be complaining and all of it, because we are all in the same economy. We can feel it. We know the implication of all of it.
I guess the employers too will tell you where our own overhead cost has also increased. So?
Well, not in all cases. There are still some employers that are doing very well. If the business is not doing well, even the employees will understand. They can see the numbers. But if the business is doing well, the employees will see it. So there are quite a number of employers that can still have room to accommodate some relief for their workers. I mean, it's not only the federal. In Ogun State, I think the governor approved about 10,000 naira monthly on account of all this, energy price and all of that. So the employers, even in the private sector, and the private sector employ about 80% or more, of the workforce that we have in the country.
So if 80% is left out, I mean, they're not making a lot of impact.
No, I mean, the private sector should do something. I agree with you. Because the thing is really biting.
It is biting, yes, it is really biting. Yeah. But so, coming to the issue now is the fear that this pay increase in some of the public sector will trigger inflation, and you're trying to calm our nerves on that it's not likely to happen.
No, certainly not. Because we need to look at this within the context of the materiality of the amount that we are talking about. First, look at the scope. This is just about the core federal civil servants, not all employees in the public sector. We are talking of the core federal civil servants. That is one. The second point is that this adjustment or this review is only about allowances. Duty to allowance, extra code, all sorts of allowances that people get within the civil service. Then, of course, there is also the component of the exit benefits. The pension, the retirement, and all of those things. So it's not as if it's a total review of all the wages and all of that. Certainly not. This is just about allowances essentially. And these allowances don't come all the time. If you talk of travel allowance, it's only when you travel that you get it. If you talk about extra code, it's only when you travel out of the country. You don't travel all the time. Not everybody has the privilege of that kind of travel. If you are talking about the exit package that has been improved, it's only when you are leaving the service that you get it. So if you look at all of these things, of course, it is very clear that it is not material enough to trigger inflation. And it's not for all public sector workers. We also need to make that clear. It is for workers who are in the core civil service. Okay. Because there are some of them that are outside the civil service salary structure. We take the central bank, NNPC, Communications Commission, maybe the customs, quite a number of them like that are not within the civil service scale. So it's not something that affects everybody. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, that has been clarified now. Let's talk about going back to what you said, the public and the private sector in a time like this, the general welfare of the workers. Some days ago, we saw the trade union asking for a tax relief, a 50% tax cut because of all that's going on. I wonder if you think perhaps that could offer relief to employees or workers.
Well, it could offer some relief, but my view is that the workers and the workers' union should be looking at much broader issues about the welfare of their members. Because there is too much fixation of focus on salaries. And what we have seen is that if you have salary increase, before you know it, inflation will catch up with it. You now come back again to be asking. So I think it is better to look at critical issues that put pressure on the workers in terms of things like maybe transportation, for instance. That is very important. The cost of transportation is huge. You know, the impact of that on the salaries of workers is a lot. You know, so we can begin to engage the employers, whether in the public sector or private sector, on what they can do. For instance, by providing staff buses, you know, for their staff. You know, there are also concerns, for instance, around issues of housing. These are very critical issues. Look at the cost of rent now in the urban centers. You know, so these are issues, and we are talking of post-retirement. Because if we are talking of the welfare of staff, it's not only when you are in service. You should also think or worry about when you leave the service. I mean, we saw what happened to the kind of protest coming from the police officers who have retired and so on. You know, those are concerns. These are things that create anxiety, you know, among people who are already in service.
You also have the healthcare access.
Yes, you have healthcare access.
Because we're supposed to have health insurance.
We have health insurance, but it's not as effective and as widespread and as inclusive as it should be. Because, I mean, you know what the cost of healthcare is now. If you go to a private hospital to see a consultant, medication and all of that, those who have medical conditions, they know the kind of impact the cost of medical expenses is having on them. So these are things that labor should be worrying about. We need to have a more robust health insurance scheme, you know, that will be compulsory, that will cover practically everybody, all employees, whether in the public sector or in the private sector. Because this will allow more investment, you know, a pool of funds to go into investment in healthcare and so on. So quite a number of...
and I think you also talked about job security and labor market.
Job security is key. I mean, we have seen some sectors that are doing well. For instance, financial services sector. Where should we be having casualization? In a bank. I mean, the banking sector is one of the best performing in this economy. So how do you defend a situation where you now have staffs, graduates that are kept on contracts for so many years, no robust condition of service, no terms of employment that is very credible. Some of them are treated as casual staff. Some of them, after spending 5-10 years, they are just, you know, laid off just like that. So this kind of thing should not be happening, particularly in sectors that we know have the capacity at least to treat their workers.
Yeah, I think the oil and gas sector too, they talk a lot about casualization.
Yes, in the oil and gas.
That's another sector that's doing well.
It's doing well too. So, I mean, the labor union should be looking at those critical issues, because those things should not be allowed to happen. Because the workers are helpless, they need the labor unions to support them. Rather than be talking about salaries and reviews and all the time, they should be looking at all those important things.
And Dr. Yusuf, I'm surprised that you're worried about taxation too, when we're just in a new tax regime.
Yeah, taxation, because yes, in the current tax reform, there are provisions to protect, you know, the lower cadre of staff. But we can do more. We can do more. For instance, there should be allowances for dependents allowances, for instance. You know, we are in an environment where we are brothers keepers. For everybody that is in employment, so many people are dependent on them. Not just your immediate family. You'll be amazed how many extended family relations that people have to be sharing their meager salary with. You know? So when you have this tax system, it is good. It is the beginning of a journey. But as you go forward, we need to give a lot more relief, you know, to workers, particularly to take care of the fact that so many people are dependent, you know, on employees that are you know, in employment.
So what do you mean by multiple deductions and levies?
Well, what that means is that for some organization, And in some cases, although that is being addressed now, sometimes you have a lot of deductions within salary for, different kind of things. Either we have, at the time we have the NHS, that's why the doctor, people didn't see the outcome of it. People didn't get the housing loan and all, and yet they had some of these deductions. So for some workers, we have some of those deductions. But what is important in all of this is that we should ensure that we have a tax regime that gives a lot more breathing space for workers. That's extremely important because the salary, particularly in the public sector, and even in some elements, in some sectors in the private sector, like manufacturing, like even journalism, the salary is not so fantastic.
Bring it home.
So we should give as much room as possible to give relief to this category of workers and minimize whatever reductions that is being done there. So that is, and even in the public sector, you notice that the disparity is a lot. You can imagine somebody who works in NNPC, who works in Central Bank, who works in Nigerian Communications Commission, compared to somebody who works in, say, Ministry of Youth and or Ministry of Agri, or you are a teacher, or you are working in all these research, even professors. Until recently, the professors were saying that their salary was just about 400,000 or 500,000. And you know what it takes to be a professor? So that inequality, even within the public sector space, is something that we should begin to interrogate. In some of these institutions in the public sector, the salary that somebody gets in 1 month is what some of their counterparts in other segments of the public sector will get in 6 months. And yet all of them are in the same public sector. So that disparity is something that I think we also need to correct, so that we have,
I wonder
we have
who will
more
correct
commitment.
it for us, sir.
Is it?
Who will correct it?
No, it is the government. I mean, the government has taken some steps. All of them are working for government. So there has to be some a framework to close these gaps. You don't have a situation where people be struggling to be posted away from one ministry to another agency and all of that. That is the kind of situation that these things create,
All right, but let me just get your thought, Dr. Yusuf, before we let you go. We've seen in the midst of, the Middle East crisis, how a lot of countries, including some countries on the continent, we saw like South Africa, for instance, they reduced their fuel levy so that the price, at least would reduce and all of that. And we know, we appreciate that the government, the federal government is giving attention to some public servant workers. But for the larger economy, it does seem like we haven't received any buffer from the government, both the federal and the state government, to help cushion some of the impacts of this energy price crisis that we're having with the Middle East war, even though we know that the government's revenue has increased.
Yes, it's something to worry about, I think, I must admit. I must also admit that a few state governments have done something. I gave the example of Ogun State that approved 10,000 naira extra every month for their workers. But I believe we need to do something that is more holistic, at the federal level, at the state level, to address the issue of this energy cost. And I listened to the MD of Dangote one time when he was saying, listing all the multitude of taxes and levies that they pay to government agencies. Only recently, we had a cries of the airline operators about how they want to shut down their operations because of the cost of jet fuel, So it took that kind of thing before the government now responded, to say, okay, we are going to waive this, we are going to suspend this, But we don't have to wait for that. It's a lot of pain on the citizens, and I think that the government, should have come up with something. And it's not too late for the government to come up with some kind of intervention. It could be financial, just as the Ogun State government and so on. It could be in the area of transportation, encouraging more mass transit. It could be in the area of reducing taxes and levies, for operators in the energy supply chain, so that can be transmitted in terms of cheaper fuel. It could be in the area of even electricity. If you have more power, you need to go and be carrying jerry can to be buying diesel, to be buying petrol. Those needs will reduce, But the government needs to demonstrate a lot more sensitivity as far as the current situation is concerned. Surely.
Well, I mean, thank you for those suggestions, and we hope that at least behind closed doors, there are conversations going on. Maybe they're just waiting to unveil it.
Hopefully.
For the Nigerian people. Dr. Muda Yusuf, Chief Executive Officer of the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Ini. Thank you.